Members of the commission, we're now live.
Good evening and welcome to the June 10th, 2026 meeting of the Montgomery County Historic Preservation Commission. My name is Jeffrey Haynes. I am the chair. I will now ask my fellow commissioners and staff to introduce themselves, beginning on my left.
Carly Bond.
Michael Galway.
Sandra Prather.
Jonathan Kaplan.
Devin Murtha, Historic Preservation Staff.
Dan Brugert, Historic Preservation Staff.
Rebecca Ballo, Historic Preservation Staff. Laura DiPasquale, Historic Preservation Staff.
Thank you. The first item on our agenda this evening are the historic area work permits. Have the work permits been duly advertised?
Yes, Mr. Chair, they were advertised in the May 27th edition of the Washington Times.
Very good. If anyone is here to testify for any of the cases, please give a speaker form to staff and they will let us know that you are here to address one of the cases. We are going to begin tonight by expediting the cases we believe can be expedited based on the staff reports. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to case 1A at 3948 Baltimore Street, Kensington, 1D at 2 Valley View Avenue, Tacoma Park, 1E at 12 High Street, Brookville, case 1F at 3930 Washington Street, Kensington, case 1G at 46 Grafton Street, Chevy Chase, case 1H at 3710 Bradley Lane, Chevy Chase, and 31I at 19 High Street, Brookville.
Mr. Chair, hearing no objections, I move that we approve the following historic or area work permits in accordance with the staff reports based upon the record before us and in consideration of the recommendation of the local advisory panels and including the conditions recommended by staff. HOP number 1153990 at 3948 Baltimore Street, Kensington. HOP number 1157046 at 2 Valley View Avenue, Tacoma Park. HOP number 1157380 at 12 High Street, Brookville. HOP number 1157677 at 3930 Washington Street, Kensington. HOP number 1158773 at 46 Grafton Street, Chevy Chase. HOP number 1153039 at 3710 Bradley Lane, Chevy Chase. And HOP number 867436, revision number 4 at 19 High Street, Brookville.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Commissioner Kaplan, a second.
All in favor, say
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? The ayes have it. So the motion passes unanimously. Those cases are all approved. If you have any questions, you can speak to staff tomorrow during regular business hours. We appreciate your work to preserve your properties and in working with staff to submit easily approvable work permits. We will now move to the first case we will hear tonight is HOP 1B at 102 East Lenox Street, Chevy Chase. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, this is Laura with the staff. This is a review of HOP 1159309 for window replacement at 102 East Lenox Street, Chevy Chase. The subject property is a contributing resource in the Chevy Chase Village Historic District. The vernacular colonial revival building was constructed between 1916 and 1927 and served as a carriage house, garage, and potentially chauffeur's residence for the circa 1899 John L. Weaver House at 101 East Kirk Street before becoming a private residence prior to 1952. The project is subject to review under the Chevy Chase Village Historic District Guidelines, Chapter 24A of the Montgomery County Code, and the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. The applicants propose to replace 6 existing vinyl windows on the front elevation and one existing vinyl window on the east side elevation with new vinyl windows. The applicants also propose to install new wood trim around the perimeter of the 7 windows, but have not provided details on the dimensions or installation of this trim. The date of the existing vinyl windows is unknown, but they appear to predate the designation of the Chevy Chase Village Historic District expansion in 1998. The manufacturer of the existing windows is not specified. The proposed windows are vinyl Provia Aspect AP 500 Series 501 double hungs with 6/6 flat internal grids. Some manufacturer's examples, photographs of the existing house and windows, few interior views. So staff recommends denial of the proposed window replacement. Staff notes that the applicants originally questioned whether a HOP was required for the window replacement, as they considered it to be in-kind work that did not require a HOP. Chapter 24A6A1 states that historic area work permits are required for constructing, reconstructing, moving, relocating, demolishing, or in any manner modifying, changing, or altering the exterior features of a historic site or a historic resource located within a historic district. Chapter 24A6B states that exceptions to this rule include any ordinary maintenance, repair of exterior features, any customary farming operations, or any landscaping, which will have no material effect on a historic resource located within a historic district of which such features are a part. Chapter 24A040101F goes on to define ordinary maintenance as work on a historic site or a historic resource within a historic district which does not alter in any way the exterior features of the subject property, including the architectural style, design, and general arrangement of the exterior, as well as the nature, texture, details, and dimensions of building materials, windows, doors, siding, etc. Staff finds that the full replacement of the vinyl windows with equally incompatible new vinyl windows with wood trim constitutes an alteration to the property and therefore is subject to the historic area work permit review. Per the guidelines, window replacements on contributing resources in the Chevy Chase Village District are to be reviewed with moderate scrutiny if the windows are visible from the public right-of-way, as the windows proposed for replacement are. Although the definition of moderate scrutiny allows for the use of compatible substitute materials, the guidelines explicitly discourage the use of vinyl windows on contributing resources, and as such, staff finds that vinyl is not a compatible substitute material per the guidelines in Chapter 24A8B2. Staff finds that the proposed vinyl replacement with internal grids also runs counter to the Secretary of the Interior standards. Standard 6 states that deteriorated historic features will be repaired rather than replaced. Where the severity of deterioration requires replacement of a distinctive feature, the new feature will match the old in design, color, texture, and where possible, materials. Replacement of missing features will be substantiated by documentary and physical evidence. Staff finds that the original windows of this property are missing and the original window configuration is unknown, but that vinyl windows were first introduced in Germany in 1954 and introduced to the United States in the 1960s and did not gain wide usage until the 1970s. Therefore, staff finds that vinyl would not have been the original window material for a building constructed between 1916 and 1927. Staff finds that the age and style of the building and the proportions of the window openings would suggest that the original windows were double-hung wood windows with true divided lights, as simulated divided lights were not common until a period that postdates even the introduction of vinyl windows, and that a compatible replacement window would approximate the appearance of traditional wood windows. The expanded guidance of the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines for rehabilitating historic buildings lists treatments that are recommended and not recommended regarding window replacement. These guidelines recommend replacing incompatible non-historic windows with new windows that are compatible with the historic character of the building, and when designing for missing historic features, using a design that is compatible with the size, scale, material, and color of the historic building. With that in mind, staff finds that in addition to material concerns, the design of the proposed windows is incompatible for use on a historic building, as the proposed Provia Aspect vinyl windows do not replicate the profiles, dimensions, or finish of traditional wood windows. Staff finds that the proposed windows have internal grids that create an excessively flat appearance, lack a traditional putty slope relationship between the glazing and sash, have overly narrow sash proportions, and include multiple steps in the exterior sash and frame that are not found in traditional wood sash. Staff notes that the HPC has approved aluminum-clad windows with simulated divided lights on contributing resources in the Chevy Chase Village Historic District, where the applicants have demonstrated that the proposed windows replicate the profiles, dimensions, finish, and other visual qualities of traditional wood windows, but staff has been unable to find a record of any approval of a HOP for vinyl window replacement or installation, or the issuance of a letter confirming that such work would not require a HOP. Chapter 24A8B states that the Commission shall instruct the Director to issue a permit or issue a permit subject to such conditions as are found to be necessary to ensure conformity with the purposes and requirements of this chapter if it finds that 1, the proposal will not substantially alter the exterior features of a historic site or historic resource within a historic district. Staff finds that the use of vinyl windows on a contributing resource in the Chevy Chase Village Historic District does substantially alter the exterior features of the resource owing to the incompatibility of the material, failing to satisfy this section of the chapter. The proposal is compatible in character and nature with the historical, archaeological, architectural, or cultural features of the historic site or historic district in which a historic resource is located and would not be detrimental thereto or to the achievement of the purposes of this chapter. Staff finds that the use of vinyl windows on a contributing resource in the district is incompatible with the character and nature of the historic resource and is detrimental to the purposes of this chapter. The proposal would enhance or aid in the protection, preservation, and public or private utilization of the historic site or resource located within a historic district in a manner compatible with the historical, archaeological, architectural, or cultural value of the historic site or historic district in which the historic resource is located. Staff finds that the applicants failed to demonstrate that the work aids in the protection, preservation, and public or private utilization of the resource in a way that is compatible with the historical and architectural value of the resource or district. Staff finds that there are numerous available products, including substitute materials, that can adequately replicate the appearance of historic wood windows and would be compatible with the historic resource and district guidelines. Or the proposal is necessary in order that unsafe conditions or health hazards be remedied. Staff finds that the applicants fail to demonstrate that the proposal is necessary in order to remedy an unsafe condition or health hazard. 5, the proposal is necessary in order that the owner of the subject property not be deprived of reasonable use of the property or suffer undue hardship. Staff finds that the applicants fail to demonstrate that the proposal is necessary in order that the owner not be deprived of reasonable use of the property or suffer undue hardship. 6, in balancing the interests of the public in preserving the historic site or historic resource located within a historic district with the interests of the public from the use and benefit of the alternative proposal, the general public welfare is better served by granting the permit. Staff finds that the applicants do not demonstrate that the general public welfare is better served by granting the permit. Absent a finding of appropriateness under Chapter 24A8B, staff finds that based on the evidence and information presented to or before the Commission, that the alteration for which the permit is sought would be inappropriate, inconsistent with, or detrimental to the preservation, enhancement, or ultimate protection of the historic site or historic resource within a historic district, and to the purposes of this chapter, must be denied under Chapter 24A8A, the Chevy Chase Village Historic District Guidelines, and the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. Staff also notes that the Commission received comments from the Chevy Chase Village LAP, which supported the staff recommendation of denial. Per the guidelines, the HPC is to give considerable weight to the recommendations of the local advisory panel. Happy to answer any questions you might have for staff.
Do commissioners have questions for staff? I have one. You said that you could not find documentation that a HOP was applied for the current vinyl windows. Do we have any idea of the timeline or suspected timeline that those windows would have been installed?
I don't. We have a small photo of the property from the 1998 district expansion. It's kind of a thumbnail size. And the windows appeared to be approximately the same, and the applicants have indicated that the windows are about 30 years old, so that would make sense.
So we suspect that the windows were replaced prior to the historic designation? Correct.
I think that's a possibility, yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? If not, then I will ask the applicants, William and Susan Kirby, to come up and have a seat in the front. And if you would, please push the button on the mic till it turns green. And if you would state your name for the record, you'll have 7 minutes to make a presentation or ask questions of the commission.
Just push it once.
Yeah, yep, you got it.
There you go. My name is William Kirby, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
And I'm Susan Kirby. Thank you very much.
We, as residents of Montgomery County, appreciate that we have a commission and staff. But with regard to our application for replacement of the 7 windows, my view is that our present application is such that we are not changing the exterior features of our house. We purchased the house in 1995. The windows and doors and multiple other things were not in very good shape, shall I say. And we replaced the windows throughout the house in, I think, 1996, and it is the present vinyl windows. As it closely replicates the present windows that were in place at the time of the establishment of the historic district, it seems to me that we anticipate having little change in the features of the house with proceeding with this project. Additionally, several of the present windows are non-functioning, and I admit that we use the others more sparingly just because we don't trust that we would be able to close them if we opened them.
And also, our bedroom is on the first floor, so that would be an exit in case of fire. And one of those windows is nailed shut. And we have had a window repair company come out and take a look at them.
And the repair said these windows are not repairable. So in that sense, our application seems consistent with allowing the removal of potentially unsafe conditions as well as allowing us to have reasonable use of our property. Just so we'd be able to know that we can open the windows and close them and be able, because they were designed to be able to open and swing in to be more easily washed, but that has not been true for the last at least 5 years or so. With approval of our application and completion of the proposed work, it's my view that the character of the property, as it has been for the last 28 years, will be retained and preserved in the state it was when the historic district was established. The house had been a residence since the early 1950s, as best I can tell from review of records, and has undergone at least 2, if not 3, major additions since the original house served as a carriage house or garage for presently the residents of our lovely neighbors at 101 Kirk Street. We considered replacement with equivalent wooden windows, but we work with a contractor with whom over 30 years we've had more than 24 projects completed maintaining this property, both replacing outside wood, replacing eaves with, and doing interior work as well. And so we trust their judgment, but there would be a considerable increase in cost for trying to find comparable wooden window replacements that would be able to be inserted without having to cause considerable reconstruction of one of our our library that was redone about 10 years ago. So with that being so, we respectfully request your consideration and subsequent instructions from the commission to the director to issue this permit, as it will not substantially alter the exterior features of our house. It maintains its appearance and character and nature of the historic district as it was when the district was established. It eliminates some unsafe conditions with the non-functioning windows being replaced, and it allows us as the owners and residents to not be deprived of the use of these windows. Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you. The commissioners have questions for the applicant. Commissioner Prather.
Yes, this is Commissioner Prather, and I want to thank you for your careful thought and care of your home. From looking at the photos, it does show that you have been very intentional. And I have first a timeline question, and so I'm trying to put it all together. I did read the report twice, but I do have a question in terms of your ownership. Did it start after the home was historically designated, or was it prior
No,
to?
it was prior.
Okay.
Prior to, it was 1995.
Okay. I heard you say that the vinyl windows were there when you bought the house?
No,
The vinyl windows were placed as replacements for the poorly functioning, and I remember they were, I don't remember the
we can't
details,
remember
but
the
they leaked like sieves.
Okay. I will state my question.
okay.
Did you install the vinyl windows?
Yeah,
Yes.
yes, we did.
Okay.
We were looking for a fairly quick fix, honestly, and affordable. And I have to say that maintaining this property has not been cheap.
Understood. When you, prior to installing the vinyl windows, did you consult the LAP?
There was no LAP.
There was no LAP.
It
Okay, I
was-
just
it
want to
was
make sure my
prior.
timeline
Right.
was, okay.
That came into being 2 or 3 years after, and we are very much in favor of it. I worked for the Montgomery County Historical Society for a fair number of years. I mean, we were on board with it. Also, I want to point out that the replacement, what we're going to do with the trim, there is aluminum on there. We were young and dumb when we put those windows in. So what we're going to do, the trim is going to look exactly the same as it is in the picture. They're just pulling off the aluminum, which I've never liked, and replacing it with wood. So it will be a wood trimmed area.
So if I understand correctly, you are still promoting the vinyl windows with wood trim. And are you aware that's inconsistent with the Chapter 24?
Apparently, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Galway.
All right, I'm a little slow, this is Commissioner Galway, so it sounds like you bought the home either around 1995 or, okay.
November of 1995.
Okay, and upon buying it, you replaced the windows?
That is
Well,
correct.
among other things, yeah.
Right,
It was
right,
not in good shape when we bought it.
Right, I'm not surprised. And then it wasn't 2 or 3 or 4 years later
No.
that that the neighborhood district was actually classified. Is that, I mean, it was,
You should have records of when that came into being. I can't remember.
but
It was-
you're,
I think it was in the works, or they were talking about it when we moved
okay,
there.
let me ask it a different way. So it was subsequent to you buying and replacing the windows that
Yes.
that it was that it was
Yes.
was classified, established? Okay, thank you.
Any other commissioner questions? Commissioner Kaplan.
I think you've already answered this, I just want to clarify. So with the wood trim, you're talking about just taking, removing the aluminum and putting wood in the same,
Yeah.
in the same configuration as it is now?
Yeah.
Just so you'd be kind of returning it to what it was? Okay. Okay, thanks.
I'll ask a question. In determining or deciding on replacement windows, did you consider any other type of window, like a clad unit, SDL type window?
No, actually, we weren't aware of it. We were thinking more in terms of wood. And at one point, our contractor said that if, he was looking for a drop-in window, and he didn't think a drop-in wood window existed. And if you look at the picture in the front here on the lower part of the two-story, that includes a lot of built-in bookshelves. And he thought at one point that we would have to tear that out, or have to really, in order to get the windows, wood windows in, there'd be a lot of work in that room, which we were horrified by. And they are custom bookshelves. So we decided not to pursue that. But no, we were not aware of the other types of windows.
Somewhat naively, I presumed that making like-for-like exchanges would work.
Vinyl is the bad word here.
Well,
Yeah.
speaking of which, so the original windows of the house were clearly wood, single pane, wood windows, traditional, likely given the year that the structure was built.
I have no idea. The thing is, the house has been much added on to. I mean, if you look at it, kind of extends way out. We know that's a huge addition. We don't know. I mean, I can't remember. I just remember our bedroom was awfully cold because we were getting a lot of wind through the windows, around the windows. I can't remember. The windows, what do they look like?
I just remembered that I kept track of utilities each month, and for the first 6 months we lived there compared to the following 6 months after we replaced the windows and doors, that our utility expenses dropped about 250%.
I believe it. If you had the original windows, single pane, perhaps didn't have the
Probably,
weather
yeah.
stripping, probably leaked, all of that. But you said something that does kind of concern me. Are you suggesting that the portion of this photo to the left of the front door might have been an addition?
Oh, yeah,
We know
it
it was an
was.
addition.
I mean,
It's-
there was a lot of additions made to this thing, and we don't have good records. It was an outbuilding. I think it was retrofitted for residential use probably during World War II, because people were desperately looking for housing, but we know very little about it.
Does staff have any opinion about that? I guess I'm questioning if there was an addition, a later addition, if that wing to the left of the photo is a later addition or not. Perhaps it's the last two windows, that section is what we're talking about. I think the lean-to portion of the roof was probably original and the gable portion original. But do we have any knowledge if the last two window bays were add-ons?
I don't have any knowledge of that specifically. The whole property is classified as contributing in the district.
Okay. We're going to proceed on that basis then. So if there are no more questions for the applicant, I think we will give you our thoughts.
Chair Haynes, I'm sorry if I may. At the conclusion of the questioning, then there should be a motion and then discussion.
Okay. A motion on to approve or not approve or deny.
Yes, it's a little different than a preliminary consultation in that sense, though if you all would, I'm sorry, I may have misunderstood. I'm sorry. Did you just want to deliberate amongst amongst the commissioners?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
My
And then
apologies.
vote, yeah. Okay, thank you. So the house, we feel we established that would have had wood windows, single pane, puttied windows. Had the historic designation come before you bought the house, and it is likely the vinyl windows would not have been approved. We would have been looking to either maintain, and it comes down to the details. The way the muttons read, the dimensions of the frame, the sash, all of that changes with a vinyl window. The muttons are in between the glass panes versus actually, protruding from it. The muttons were the structure that held the glass in place. And so these level of details, just like the rest of the details of your house, the siding, the trim boards, et cetera, all add to the character defining features of the house. And so that's I think the crux of the vinyl window versus the traditional windows that would have been there. The Chevy Chase Village guidelines strongly discourage vinyl windows. And so while I hear you had these replaced before the designation, it's kind of like building codes. What you could do 30 years ago, you can't do now if you were doing an addition. You're now in a historic district. We're going to look at this from a historic perspective, and I think the simple matter is that the vinyl windows just don't correspond, historically speaking, to what would have been there and what would be a compatible replacement. There are clad windows where you have metal cladding on the outside, you have wood interiors, you have insulated glass, you have simulated divided lights that replicate as closely as can be a true divided light, where you have muttons that are applied on the outside of the glass and not in between the glass. And the sash and frame are dimensionally similar to a traditional window. That would be an option to consider. Question for staff, would they be eligible then for tax credits if they went with a different window?
The question was whether they would be eligible for the tax credit if they were to go with an aluminum clad window as opposed to a wood window. Our guidance has changed slightly on that recently, but if it were subject to an approved HOP, would we?
I really think we would have to just take I couldn't give you an answer right now, unfortunately. I mean, if they were to do a wood window, then yes, that easily qualifies for the tax credit. The updated, and then for window replacements that used non-traditional materials but were still the subject of an approved HOP, it really was on a case-by-case basis. Then within the last year, staff had presented to the commission updated guidance that those should not qualify for the tax credit, those types of applications. However, the commission had asked us to hold off on that for another year, but then next year that would apply. Although I would say very broadly, on any of the tax credit cases, it is the staff making a recommendation to the HPC that is then making a recommendation to the Department of Finance. None of the determinations that the staff or the HPC make on the tax credits are final decisions. So that is one of the reasons too. We we make available the information about all the tax credit applications publicly upon request. If the commission wanted to take into account this case or any other case for singular circumstances and make a different recommendation to the Department of Finance based on those circumstances, you certainly can. And we have done that in the past on a case-by-case basis for properties that come into remedy after the fact work, or properties that sometimes use novel replacement materials. The HPC can make kind of a one-off recommendation for the Department of Finance to take into consideration, but ultimately it is up to the Department of Finance. Does that help?
That does.
Okay.
That does help.
So if the HPC wanted to direct that something, like if they put in aluminum-clad windows, that you would consider that for this case in these circumstances to be potentially eligible for the tax credit, that is certainly within your purview to do that.
Thank you. Very good. So I would certainly, myself, I can't speak with the other commissioners, support your application for tax credits. But that will mean changing the type of window that you're going to install. So if there's any other discussion by the commissioners, Commissioner Galway.
Yes, Commissioner Galway. All right, so what we do know is that the windows were replaced, the wood windows presumably that were there before were replaced with the vinyl windows after you bought it, but before the neighborhood was designated. So in effect, it was historic material that was lost. This would be the perfect opportunity to remedy that, to say, all right, the wood windows belong in this home. They were removed, unfortunately, at one point, and it'd be fantastic to say we're going to put those wood windows back to help embellish the character of the home. So I guess I really don't, we'll take it to a vote, I guess.
Yeah, and just from my position, a little bit different in that I'm flexible to consider a composite type window, meaning clad window, not composite, but a clad unit versus an all wood window, because the clad unit will be more maintenance-free than a wood window. So I'm leaving that option open, but what we will be voting on today is, as stated in the staff report, but there are other window options out there that I think you need to think about. There are potential for the tax credits, which I think we could probably write an argument to support that. Make sense? So would anybody care to make a motion on the current staff recommendation? Commissioner Prather.
This is Commissioner Prather, and I agree with the staff recommendation that the HPC deny the application under 24A. I recommend relooking at materials that are compatible with the neighborhood, with the LAP. I did hear reference that there are homes that use clad or aluminum, et cetera. I believe there are materials and finishes that would complement and remain in the distinct features of that community. I also would say that, as Commissioner Galloway said, that now is a good opportunity to right a wrong I highly recommend that, and I believe there are cost-effective ways. I don't strongly use the word wood replacement, but I believe there is a subject matter expert in the trade that would recommend something that would be fitting and appropriate and in alignment with ensuring that, yes, you maintain your energy efficiency, but at the same time, also the character of the Chevy Chase Village Historic District guidelines.
Do I have a second?
This is Commissioner Bond, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
One opposed? You were,
Aye, for,
aye. So
this is
we
for
got
denial.
four yays and one nay. So the motion to deny passes. Speak with staff, and they will give you some guidance on how to proceed, but you'll need to rethink your strategy and come back with another hop. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could we pause the live feed? Could we pause for just 2 minutes? Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. We're back live.
Very good. We will next move on to preliminary consultations. The first case is 2A at 2500 Holman Avenue, Silver Spring. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, we do. This is Laura DePasquale with the staff. This is a preliminary consultation review for 2500 Holman Avenue, Silver Spring. Property is an outstanding resource in the Forest Glen Historic District. The large corner property includes a circa 1891 Queen Anne known as the John E. Sims House. The property was relatively recently subdivided, and the HPC approved new construction on the 2 lots to the west of the house, which are currently under construction. The project is subject to review under the Linden Forest Glen Historic District Amendment to the Master Plan, Chapter 24A, and the Secretary of the Interior's Standards for Rehabilitation. The proposal seeks retroactive approval of metal frame and tarp shed structures measuring approximately 13 feet by 40 feet at the southeast corner of the lot. The structures appear to be two end-to-end Shelter Logic 13 by 20 foot by 12 foot garage in a box size structures, which feature all steel frames with triple layer ripstop polyethylene covers. The property has had a long history of complaints and inspections related to solid waste and abandoned vehicles, which are handled by the Department of Housing and Community Affairs. The current owner purchased the property in July 2024 and has resolved the property maintenance issues with DHCA. The Department of Permitting Services, which manages construction, zoning, and structural safety to ensure properties are built and modified legally and safely, also has no open violations on the property. So a quick rundown of the past site conditions. In 2009, the property had what appeared to have been a wood frame garage or shed, along with a temporary kind of tarp-covered shed as well. By 2010, the frame garage had been replaced with two Connex boxes, seen here in these 2012 views. By March 2017, the Connex boxes had been replaced with a new shed, and the metal frame is also visible. And by July 2018, one of the existing metal frame and polyethylene covered structures is visible, at least one. By March 2021, a second temporary structure had been added to the property here and here. And again, all this was prior to current ownership. And a few more views in April 2024, March 2025, and November and July and November 2025. As of May 2026, this is a current appearance of the structures from Hollow Glen Place, as well as some of the views of the property, the adjacent new construction. The center building is yet to be built. Here you can make out the structures at the end of the rear yard. And from the intersection of Hollow Glen Place and Holman Avenue. And the previous views as well. Staff finds that given the structures have been present on the site for at least 8 years, they can no longer be considered completely temporary and should be reviewed for their compatibility with the historic resource. Staff finds that while visible from the public right-of-way, the location of the structures at the far rear corner of the property does not damage or obscure any character-defining features of the historic resource per standards 2 and 9. Staff finds that given the size of the property, the distance between the structures and the historic house, the dark color of the structure's exterior, and the lack of paving required to access, support, or utilize the structures in their current location do not substantially alter the exterior features of the resource per Chapter 24A8B1 and could be removed in the future without impairing the character of the resource per Standard 10. Staff notes that this is somewhat of an unusual situation in that the structures do not qualify fully as accessory structures subject to the property maintenance code and are inherently reversible and temporary in design, so a building permit was not required for their erection. Staff's primary concern with the structures is that they will sort of rip and become shabby or a nuisance, and that there's not a good enforcement mechanism to address that type of maintenance on this type of structure in the county. So staff requests the HPC's feedback on the appropriateness of the size, location, materials, and design of the accessory structures, and any conditions recommended for their retention or a recommended timeline for removal, if any, or any other comments you might have. And then staff would recommend the applicant make any revisions necessary and return for a hop. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Did the commission have any questions for staff? Commissioner Galway.
This is Commissioner Galway. You went through the timeline fairly thoroughly. At what point was the property sold? Was that year?
July 2024,
Thank
so
you.
it has been cleaned up pretty significantly since then.
All right, thank you.
There are no other questions for staff. I will ask the applicant to come forth. Brian Moats. Please have a seat and push the button on the mic till it turns green. And if you could state your name and relationship to the application.
Brian K. Moats, I'm the homeowner. I bought it in 2024.
Very good. You'll have 7 minutes to speak.
Now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
No worries.
So I bought the place, and not to like say her report is wrong, because there's a lot of right stuff in there, but there was actually 4 tents on that property. They were all full of trash. I cleaned them all out. I cleaned all the weeds out. I cleaned everything out. And actually, that tent in the picture isn't the same tent. It's not the same tent, and I've bought new tents to put up. Why? Well, I had a really close relationship with the previous owner. And he handed me down various items, various things. And then some of those things are in there. Also, if you could see how much trash was on that property, there's even more so inside. And every time I try to clean this place up, I get a new county violation for trash. I need a place to put the stuff. So I put stuff in there. Compounded on top of that, within the March, at the end of March, I forget exactly what day, my wastewater line was cut to my house. I no longer live there. I've been living in a hotel, me and my pregnant girlfriend, for the past 2 months. They're now moving us into more permanent housing. We got to get at least a 6-month rent apartment. Just cutting the grass over there is an endeavor now. Inside the tent now is also all of my belongings from my basement that's covered in sewage. I'm going through a list of stuff with the insurance companies to see what I can keep and what I can't keep. I don't know what to do, but that's where I'm at right now. All the neighbors love what I've done with the place. I've cleaned this place up a lot. There's only one neighbor that doesn't, and that's the developer next door. But I'm not going to get into that. But those tents are new. I put those there to hold the stuff coming out of the house and the stuff that I'd like to hold on to that my departed person that put it in the Historical Society gave down to me. And now it's also holding everything from the basement. And we're waiting on, see, I don't want to get in too many details because I'm not supposed to with a certain person in the room, legally. But we're waiting on construction in the basement to get done, and that's months out, at least. And now with the baby, I'd like to start remodeling my house. I haven't had a chance to do any of that because I keep on having to deal with all these complaints with the county. And when I start getting drywall and all that stuff, I'd like to keep it in there so I could, move stuff out while I'm moving stuff in. I guess that's my case.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We have questions for you. Commissioner Prather.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Prather, and I do empathize with myriad conditions and issues that you are handling.
Thank you.
I do have a few questions. The first question is, when you bought the home, were you aware that it was a historic home?
Yes.
Were you aware of the obligations as to Chapter 24A, the Secretary of Interior Standards for Rehabilitation?
I mean, I don't know what the statutes are, but I've been cleaning it up. I know that. I've been cleaning it up like crazy.
So I applaud you on your efforts. So the timeline and the photos do indicate you've been very intentional with cleaning up and beautifying the
Thank you.
place. What is your ask today? Are you asking to keep the
I mean,
tents?
I'd like to keep the tent there and just, I mean, give me some time. I need like a year. I'm doing a lot of stuff. And every time I put something outside, I get a new case against the county.
I have
And
a few more questions
Yeah.
with that specific one. You're putting additional tents? I'm trying to clarify the
no, I just need
report
those. I just need those.
and just quantify how many they are?
There's 2 of them back to back.
Okay. If you look at the picture I'm looking at right now, you indicate this is not current state. Is it?
No, that's the way it is. It's not the way it used to be.
Okay, okay.
I bought those tents and I erected those tents up.
So you agree the report is
One of them
accurate?
was old, it got blown down, and I bought another one.
Okay. So you agree that this report is accurate?
What I was saying is, the pictures in the report aren't all accurate from the past.
Okay.
That one is accurate.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So your ask is to keep the tent specifically for 1 year?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's the end of my questions for now. Thank you.
Other questions for the applicant? Just to clarify, so after a year or thereabout, what's your intention with the tents? Would you take them down after
Well,
you
I
finish
mean,
your work? Or
I wanted to see how far along I could get with remodeling my house. I figured if I could get a year, I could try to get it all done. If not, I'd come back in here and talk to you guys again.
Okay. Very good. If there are no more questions for the applicant, thank you.
Thank you.
And you can step back to your seat, and then we will call Marta Verma for public testimony.
Good evening. Good to see everyone. My name is Pratap Verma. For the record, Avatar Design Build. I am the builder next door. I was here, I guess, I don't know how long ago, getting permission or approval to build on this site. So good to see some familiar faces. Project is going well, but we're here because of this situation that is now starting to hurt the prospects of our project. Just as a matter of background, we started this process about 2 years ago with the historic staff, who's been incredible. And I did email this to the staff, but just as a matter of context, there are 4 lots here. And so currently where the historic home is, was originally 2 lots. Lot, I believe it was 9 and 12. And when we first met with staff, one of the kind of recommendations was that the historic home and the lot, it really made sense for that to be one space. And, we kind of agreed and focused more on developing lots 7 and 8. So the tent right now is on that other lot, and you can see it directly from the homes that we're building, particularly when you're higher up, and also when you're in the backyard, you have a clear shot of it. A few times the cover of the tents have blown off, and there appears to be a minivan with expired tags as well as an RV, which I have emailed pictures to the staff. They weren't included in the report, but it's clearly an eyesore. We've reached out to the homeowners and offered to help out. Even now, if they want to use our dumpster, they're more than happy to throw away stuff. We'd love to help out and help clean. Also offer to help out with trees. Unfortunately, what the matter an individual is referring to, there was a it wasn't the main water and sewer line, it's what we refer to as gray water, and DPS is following it, and I believe it was Inspector Patel that contacted us, was cut, and so I believe it's a sink and maybe laundry in the basement was affected by that. I think that cut happened in December, and I believe they found out about it a few months later. But nonetheless, we're here to help, whatever we can do. The main concern we have is the homes that we're building. There's 2 of them, they're gonna go on the market. One is going really quick in the fall. They're gonna be selling for about 1.6 million each. There isn't kind of a standard that you don't expect to see a structure like that next to these homes. So we're hoping that we can come to some sort of resolution.
Thank you for your comment. Any questions for this gentleman? Commissioner Kaplan?
So are you specifically, the issue you're wanting to address with the commission is specifically the tent structure?
That is correct.
Okay.
And if I may clarify, the tent structure is along Hollow Glen Place, which is kind of the farthest distance from your properties.
Yes, but so the homes, I mean, if you remember, they extend quite a bit back when we came up with the final design, and the driveways are actually in the back of the home because we have rear-facing garages. So directly across, that is the view that you see is the location of the current vehicles and tents and everything else that's there.
Okay. Other questions for this gentleman? Commissioner Galway?
Yeah, this Commissioner Galway, I think I have a question. Let me figure out how to formulate it. So your objection is the visibility of the tent structure.
Correct.
And do you think that it would be any more of an eyesore than if that tent structure was removed to be able to see a minivan and an RV or whatever other debris? Are you saying that, I mean, if it's about the tent structure and that tent structure goes away, are you going to be okay with the remaining objects literally within view?
Well, what we were told by DPS is because they cannot see the vehicles with expired tags, which per county rules, you cannot have expired tags and vehicles that are not registered on your property. That was the conundrum we were in. And we only discover it every once in a while when the tent blows over and there's a lot of wind. But you should not have unregistered vehicles parked in your yard like that. And you shouldn't have I mean, the whole conversation we had when we were looking to develop this land, originally, we were looking to purchase the entire property, but we were told that lot in the back was part of the historic resource. And today it's in disarray. So it's affecting, I mean, we went through so much work for our project, as all of you remember, just to get approvals for our project. We've invested a tremendous amount of money. And clearly this tent, which we now know has been here for decades, and I made this complaint when we first started this process, that it's not part of the historic resource. And this will not be tolerated in any other part of the county, quite frankly. And it has been tolerated in this part for some time now. We're trying to clean it up. We're, doing a lot of work on this site, and it's disappointing that despite all this investment to beautify the neighborhood, that we still have a structure that's not in compliance.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Prather?
So this is Commissioner Prather, and I just want to clarify. I don't think I heard the answer, but I'm going to try to frame it in a way that if the tent went away and the items were exposed, would you accept that? We as HPC can't really go into the tangibles, but I do have something interesting to just read out. The Secretary of Interior Standards for Rehabilitation, 2, it's the character will be preserved, meaning materials, features, and spatial relationships need to be retained. And on that note, it may be, you know, a violation of this, you know. But again, if we remove the structure and the items exist, what would be your resolve? What would be your action?
Well, then at that point, the homeowner would be forced to remove the vehicles because you are now in county violation. DPS has strictly said they cannot do anything because the vehicles that are not in conformity are not in plain sight. So you cannot enter someone's property and open a tent and see, hey, what's inside? I have pictures. This is the minivan, and that's the RV. And these were discovered because the covers came off, and they were in plain sight for many days. So to answer your question, I don't know what will happen. Maybe it'll make the matters worse, but the point is, it shouldn't be happening either way. There shouldn't be a structure there, and there shouldn't be any vehicles on the property. And this is a beautiful historic neighborhood, and we had to conform to it, and we went through the whole process. And I will tell you, we've already gotten complaints from people who came to see the house in pre-construction cells, and they're saying, we're spending $1.6 million and we have to look out to that.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you.
There are no more questions for this gentleman. You may, thank you, and you may step back. I'd like to have the applicant, Mr. Moats, come back up for,
Can I say one thing?
well, hang on.
Okay.
I have a question for you. What is the intention for the RV and the minivan?
My intention is to fix the RV up, and I've been looking to purchase a property to put the RV on. And DPS was fine with that. They know exactly what's going on, because that's one of the items that the house came with.
And that's what's, that's what's in the tents is,
Well, there's a lot of stuff in
there's a
the
lot of
tents.
stuff in the tent, not just those, so.
And
okay.
now all my stuff that, I mean, I hope you don't take the tent away, because I don't want all my stuff getting wet from the basement.
So if I understood correctly, the sewer line, and correct
Yes.
me if I'm wrong, was cut by the construction next door, is that correct?
Yes, sir. And that was to my whole house, not just my basement. We can't use the
Well, I would
toilet.
imagine so. If they hit the main sewer line, then
Yeah.
how any of the plumbing would be out, not just the basement.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner?
So can you speak to the stability of the tents? Because we're hearing that maybe
The
they're not so
tent
stable.
is perfectly stable now. The problem was I tried to use an old tent, and that got blown down. You remember when we had that really big windstorm a couple months ago that was supposed to be like a historic windstorm and all that stuff? The old tent blew down. And as soon as the first day happened, there was a case against me. And so then I just waited until the inspector came around and, you know, because I bought a new tent. I had to wait for the tent to come in the mail, and then I put it back up before the inspector came around again. That was one bad
Okay.
storm.
It certainly was. Any other questions for this applicant? If not, then thank you. You can
Thank you.
go back to your seat. We will give you our thoughts on this matter. Would anybody care to initiate the conversation? Commissioner Kaplan?
Yeah, I'm struggling to figure out what our purview is here, and as opposed to purview of other agencies. I think, I mean, I feel like we're really looking at this tent structure and kind of grappling with when something temporary becomes permanent and what to do with it. And I don't know how much we are supposed to be looking at what's going on, some of these other subject matters that have come up about what's going on elsewhere on the property. We don't really have enough information about what's going on elsewhere to be looking at that anyway. So I just kind of want to start it out with kind of my uncertainty about what we're actually looking at.
I think Rebecca Ballo can give us some guidance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Rebecca Ballo for the record. So in terms of determining whether or not a historic area work permit is required, that is firmly under the purview of the HPC. The Department of Permitting Services defines a temporary structure as one that is up for 6 months or less. They have different interpretations for temporary signage that are not germane here at all. So 6 months or less makes a structure temporary. More than 6 months, it is considered permanent. The definition of a structure in the ordinance, in the Montgomery County Code, under specific terms and phrases defined, the definitions states a structure. Structure is a combination of materials that requires permanent location on the ground or attachment to something having permanent location on the ground, including buildings and fences. So while that definition does take into account items that require footers, that would be the attachment to something having permanent location on the ground, the first part of that phrase stating a combination of materials that requires permanent location on the ground would also encompass structures or a collection of materials that does not necessarily require a footer. So the staff's determination is that, yes, this is a structure, and yes, it has been here. There has been a frame tented structure in this location in excess of 6 months, making this permanent. So the staff determination, which the HPC can accept or not, but our determination is that this is a permanent structure that would require a historic area work permit. To maybe expand a little bit on maybe where Commissioner Kaplan was intending to go or to help the commissioners, in the past, the HPC has allowed for tents and other structures to remain up, seasonally, sort of hops that have timing associated with it. The Wood End property, for example, that Nature Forward, formerly the Audubon Society, that they use, the John Russell Pope House, during the summer months, they have a tent up all of the time, and that is for their summer camp activities and for weddings. And eventually they did get a hop for that because they needed these concrete footers, and they needed to have clips and things that held the tent down. There was another situation at an eatery that just was going to have a tent up during the summer, and we didn't require a hop for that. They were going to have it up only for like 3 or 4 months over the summer. So we said that's less than 6 months. You don't need a hop for that. So you've looked at kind of a range of circumstances. But coming back to this one, because there has been what we determined to be a structure in this location for greater than 6 months, and then the applicant by his own testimony would like to be able to keep it for at least a year, we are recommending that a historic area work permit be required to keep this. Now, if the commission wanted to condition that in certain ways, like give a temporal limit to that historic area work permit, that would certainly also be within your purview to do so.
Great, thank you. Does that help clarify for you, Commissioner Kaplan, sort of our goal here? Oh, very good. Any other questions, debates? Well, I'll give you my views. Despite perhaps the legal definition of a permanent structure, this doesn't have footings. It's not tied to a concrete foundation or footings. A hurricane could blow this away. So it's a structure, if you want to call it that, that can be easily removed in the future. I think there's been a reasonable attempt by the owner to clean up the property. It was certainly much worse off prior to this May 26. And given the conditions of the sewer issue and needing space to store stuff, he's got the RV and the minivan at least out of sight, if under a tent. The tent is a gray color. It kind of, as much as a tent could blend into the shaded tree area, I feel that it's viable to maintain the tent for a limited time, not forever. I would start the clock running on this limited time once the sewer is corrected. Because otherwise, that could be 2 months, 6 months, 8 months. So once the sewer is connected and your plumbing is working, then the clock runs, and I would give you a year. After a year, you'd have to come back and before us, and we would reconsider it. But my recommendation is that you come back for a hop with these conditions that I've stated we'll give you 1 year. And once the sewer is fixed from that date, and that would be what I stipulate, or would recommend that we stipulate. For the gentleman next door, Mr. Verma, plant green giant arborvitae. They grow fast, they'll screen out. People want the house, they'll buy it. There are many homes that are more distinguished, but there are other homes that are not distinguished in that neighborhood. So people will buy in that neighborhood for its location, probably because of the historic house on the corner. So I appreciate your concern that it may turn some people away, but at the same time, landscaping does a lot of great tricks, and they'll probably do it anyways. So it is my opinion and recommendation that we allow this to happen. It's removable, it's going to be temporary, and you'd have to go through a HOP application to make that happen. Other thoughts? There are no other thoughts. Oh, Commissioner Galway.
Yeah, I just, this is Commissioner Galway, I just couldn't help but think my kid's going and setting up a tent in the backyard, and all of a sudden I'm in trouble because I have a temporary structure. And I think the key to this whole discussion is the nature of either the temporary or the permanency of this. And I can certainly see both sides. I think I was a little bit misunderstood. I misunderstood when originally, well, there's some things that were from the house that were in the shed, and then I find out that it was a minivan and an RV. Well, those weren't in the house. They may have been in a property. So I think that's a little disingenuous in that maybe I wasn't getting the full story. But I also then see that there has been a lot of improvement on the property since you've bought it, and getting the crap that's in the yard out of the yard. So I find that you're making an attempt to do something that is admirable. I understand the other side too that says, well, wait a minute, we've got these very nice new homes, and we want a buyer to come in and feel good. If this is temporary, then I just don't see, I see, we see this all the time on construction. I mean, you have a project that's being renovated, and the contractor's got their construction trailers on site, and they're doing the very best they can. They may have some sort of fencing to block visually the work that's going on, the backhoes and those kinds of things. I understand all that. I think you have attempted to do that, maybe maybe because you were forced to do that, but you've at least gone to a step to say, hey, I'm going to try to hide this stuff so that it isn't as visible to the surrounding neighbors. So I commend you on that. The fear I have, and I think that speaks to Chair Haynes, his comments about this can't be here in 5 years. That's the thing that if I was building homes next door, I think I'd be concerned. How long is this going to be here? So I think I kind of agree that there is a sense of urgency to get the work done that needs to be done, to find a home for those vehicles, to get this out of there. I think that'd be my suggestion. And I think the idea of a hop, come in with a hop, that this becomes, it's an accessory structure for a limited period of time, I think is an appropriate approach. That you didn't put this right on the property line between your home or your property and the next door. Yes, it can be seen, but again, to Commissioner Haynes' comments, there may be ways that the owner or the owner next door can somehow help visually hide it, and bear with it for that short period of time, and then it goes away, and then hopefully everybody will be good with that. So that's my comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Kaplan.
Oh, if we're going that way, I'd also suggest language stipulating that no additional structures can be added as well.
Very good. Good point. There are no further comments? I thank you for coming in. And your next step to work with staff, but you'll formally apply for a HOP application, and staff can help you with that.
Thank you so much.
All right, very good. Moving on to our second preliminary consultation. This would be 2B at 8412 Georgia Avenue, Silver Spring. And we do have a staff report.
We do. This is Laura with the staff. This is a preliminary consultation review for construction of 2 rear additions at 8412 Georgia Avenue, Silver Spring. The property is an individually listed master plan site known as the Silver Spring Post Office and is located in downtown Silver Spring. The project is subject to review under Chapter 24A and the Secretary of the Interior's Standards for Rehabilitation. Constructed between 1936 and 1937, the Silver Spring Post Office was one of 3 distinctive post offices built in the county under the auspices of the Works Progress Administration. Located in the heart of the Georgia Avenue Commercial District, the post office represents the strong influence of the American Renaissance and revived classicism on Depression-era architecture and is a prime example of the early practice of regionalism or local adaptation in federal architecture. The building was specifically designed to complement the siting, style, and materials of the then-existing character of Silver Spring's built environment. The post office is contemporaneous with the similarly traditionally styled Falkland apartments, also built in part with federal funds, and barely predates the modernistic Art Deco buildings that have come to characterize Silver Spring, including the Silver Theater and Silver Spring and Shopping Center. The U.S. Postal Service vacated the Georgia Avenue building in 1981. The building also originally housed some WPA murals, which were relocated to the Silver Spring Public Library in 1997. Aside from an existing ramp and replacement front doors, the building retains significant integrity and appears much as it did originally. You can see in these photos that the building is characterized by strict symmetry and classical detailing and proportions. The building also reflects a hierarchy in its detailing, with the greatest level of ornamentation applied to the facade and first bays of the side elevations, with more restrained but equally symmetrical and complementary detailing for the remaining 4 bays of the side elevations and along the rear. For this preliminary consultation, the applicants seek feedback on the construction of 2 one-story additions at the north and south corners of the rear elevation on either side of an existing loading dock. On the north side, the applicants propose to remove an existing open stair landing and steps to accommodate a new egress stair addition. On the south side, the applicants would remove an existing areaway and wood ramp, as well as 3 existing windows, infilling one of the openings and cutting the other 2 flush to the finished floor levels to provide access to a new elevator. Get that up close. The new additions would be approximately 19 feet 8 inches long by 12 and a half feet wide by 16 and a half feet tall, with a 6-inch reveal along the rear elevation of the historic building. The applicants propose cladding the additions in gray and buff brick with light gray precast stone bases, dark gray, bronze, aluminum coping and awnings, and commercial aluminum doors and transom windows. Staff conceptually supports the construction of rear additions on the subject property of the proposed size and scale, but recommends changes to the form, rhythm, fenestration, and materials of the proposed additions, which will have some visibility from the Georgia Avenue public right-of-way and high visibility from the rear along Bonifant Street. Staff finds that the proposed project does not alter the front or side elevations of the historic building and limits the removal of historic material to 3 rear windows on the southwest side of the historic building, in keeping with standards 2 and 9. The proposal would cut down the sills of the basement and first floor windows at the rear elevation, but leave intact the exposed flat arch brick header of the first floor window. Staff also finds that the overall scale, massing, and location of the proposed additions, which are lower in height than the historic building at the rear of the property and set in from the rear wall plane of the historic rear wall, read as subordinate and secondary to the historic building, in keeping with guidance set forth in the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines for rehabilitating historic buildings, which extrapolate on the more succinct standards. The guidance on new exterior additions and related new construction explains that generally a new addition should be subordinate to the historic building. A new addition should be compatible but differentiated enough so that it is not confused as historic or original to the building. Staff finds, however, that the proposed design is overly differentiated from the historic building and out of keeping with the character of the resource in terms of form, rhythm, relationship of solids to voids, materials, and color. Staff finds that while a modern design is appropriate in differentiating the new from old, the asymmetrical angled form and features of the proposed additions are out of keeping with the highly symmetrical rectilinear form of the historic building. Staff recommends that the angled walls of the addition be removed and the additions made rectangular. This might also allow for an increase in the setback of the additions from the rear wall plane from 6 inches to perhaps a foot or greater. Staff finds that the asymmetrical fenestration and awnings are also incompatible with the character of the building. Staff recommends that the applicants base the alignment, rhythm, and size of window and door openings on the additions with those of the historic building and continue the rhythm and proportions of the solid to void spacing along the side elevations of the historic building in the new additions. Staff further finds that the use of solid masonry materials reads as overly heavy when directly connected to the historic building. In discussions with the applicant, staff recommended that the additions be constructed of a structural glass or storefront system to reduce their visual weight and create greater opacity. The applicants rejected this suggestion, citing safety concerns. Staff continues to hold that recommendation, but recommends that at a minimum, the applicants utilize a bay of opaque structural glass or beige cream metal panels recessed from the plane of the side elevation of the addition to create a small-scale hyphen to physically and visually separate the addition from the historic building before transitioning to weightier masonry materials, which should be in the same color range as the limestone features of the historic building. Staff recommends that the HPC require on-site samples of the proposed materials in relationship to the historic brick and limestone, and recommends the HPC condition approval upon the proposed materials being in the same warm beige or buff color range as the limestone features and pointing at the historic building when cleaned. Staff finds that as submitted, the gray, brick, and precast stone appear overly cool-toned in relationship to the warm tone of the historic building. So for this review, staff requests the HPC's feedback on the appropriateness of the proposed removal of historic fabric, the appropriateness of the size, scale, and massing of the proposed additions, the appropriateness of the design, features, and fenestration of the proposed addition, the appropriateness of the proposed materials and color, and any other comments you might have. And then we would recommend that the applicants make any revisions requested and return for a hop with updated plans, material specs, and on-site sample comparisons. Any questions for staff?
Commissioner Galway.
Yes, Commissioner Galway, you mentioned that the owner said that they didn't like the idea of the storefront for safety concerns. Was that vehicular, something hitting it, or somebody somehow breaking it, or is that a question for them?
I think that would be better suited for the
Thank you.
applicants, yeah.
Any other questions for staff? If not, then I will ask the applicants to come up. Mitchell Herman and Nick Murkowski. I apologize. Apologize for the,
It's Mrachkowski.
thank you.
Mine's easier.
So you got green lights there. Just restate your name and relationship to the application, and then you'll have 7 minutes to make a presentation.
Each?
Now, together.
I tried. All right, Nick Mrachkowski with Stoiber and Associates. And I'll start by just thanking the commissioners for taking the time today. And certainly Laura, we've been working back and forth with her, and I appreciate her just availability to sort of listen and give us that feedback and to stay engaged. It's really been helping us. So we, with Mitchell reaching out to us, has a sort of a vision for what this property could be, but we also know that there's some issues with how people can get in and out of the building, and wanting to make sure that if somebody is parking in the rear, they don't have to wheel all the way to the front of the building where there is an existing ramp. We want something that could be much more accessible, and so we thought this addition, would make good sense, and the symmetry absolutely stood out to us, and so we tried with our forms to make a gesture that was symmetrical one to the other side with some subtleties, and then to continue the progression of sort of ornateness down into simplicity and sort of contemporary sort of forms and material usage. So that's I think where the dialogue with Laura is still at. We're trying to figure out what is the right material here. We can talk about the safety and security concerns, but we feel it's appropriate for this to be sort of a of the time addition that is not screaming modernity, but also using the materials that have already been here, but in a slightly different way. Something that is very glassy and metallic wants to be a frontispiece or some sort of a main entry. This is a secondary entrance. We don't anticipate it being something where vast majority of people would enter. It's for the occasional accessibility need, and then on the stair side, it's that means of egress to on the other side of the building from the main entrance, so that people can get in and out. So with that, I'll pass it to Mitchell.
Oh, I don't have much time. I'm a native Washingtonian. I grew up near here. My mother probably brought me to this post office when I was little. I'm also a stamp collector, so I have gone to many post offices. The architecture, the structure, the interiors have always interested me. I'm discussing with the owner of this property to purchase it and refurbish it and restore it because it is crumbling. And I really am attracted to this building for the proposed purpose of assembly and improv and bringing arts to Silver Spring. The addition to the back is really not something you can see from the front if the,
Who's green?
yeah, if it's done in a way that blends in with the brick and appearance of the main structure. That was the original approach. It is not a street front like the Keegan Theater in Washington, and to have glass and mostly glass and some steel framing on a back alley, to me, brings in vandalism. Someone walking there at night throws stones and rocks and it's dangerous. It could be dangerous if it's mostly in a glass. So the brick was a means to complement the structure and to provide the maximum safety to bring people to the site. This is a unique opportunity for this structure. I've been around it, I've been in the main floor, and it needs care, it needs love. And I think it can be restored to its, I'd love to get copies of those pictures you had, but I think it can be restored to its grandeur and bring in arts into downtown Silver Spring. And I am discussing with the owner in purchasing it because of my interest. So this came up as our discussion to add the elevator for access from people coming in from the back. And the other is really an emergency because the existing steps could be dangerous. But the ramp and steps on the interior would allow people safe exiting to the building. So, you know, we're open for suggestions, but we think that the concept of what we're bringing to the rear of it is solid. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, and you did it under 7 minutes, so we appreciate that. And we appreciate that your interest in restoring the building and your ties to it. So we don't often get that with applicants, and that certainly brings another level of appreciation and meaning to the project. Are there any questions for the applicant or the architect? Not one. You did a very good job then. Do we have any comments we'd like to bring? Commissioner Galway.
This is Commissioner Galway. First of all, thanks for saving the building, you know, or at least your interest in buying the building to save it. And I think that's paramount. I think from my perspective, this isn't going to be an impossible task for you to convince us that this is okay to do. I think the scale of both the additions on both sides are appropriate. So I think from that standpoint, it's at the rear of the building. There's a few things that when I look at it, I would like to see more than a 6-inch reveal. Honestly, I think that coming from the street and looking back, it may not be obvious, even though you're using a different color palette, it may not be obvious that it is not part of the original sidewall. And so that's little small 6-inch reveal barely, at least visually in terms of the plane, will barely differentiate the difference between the old and the new. So I would look at that. I think, you know, the idea of the brick, I guess I'm less troubled with the brick and more confused with the color palette. And I know you are trying to differentiate from the other red brick, and I appreciate that, but that one elevation with, it looks like an aluminum storefront door, I feel like I'm walking into a McDonald's or something, you know, or drive-in, you know, with the little shelf over top. So I think I think you do want to, I'd suggest you play with the materials and the color. And I'm not you know, I go back and forth on the angled wall. My first thought is it helps that rear disappear from the street, so that's a big plus. But it's still awkward to me to see it. So I think just study both of those a little bit. And I do think that given the proportions and the rectilinearity, if that's a word, of the entire building, maybe those do need to be more rectangular and less triangular or less sloped on the one wall. So I would look at that. But I think all in all, I am so thankful that, you know, you have the interest in trying to utilize this building in a way that otherwise may not be appropriate. And I think that your point about people in the back not having to go to the front to get in is a tremendously valuable comment. I think that would, you know, it just adds value to the building. And so, you know, I will support it, but I think there just needs to be some work on those, on what that really wants to look like. Maybe it's a fiberboard cement, maybe it's a wood product. The glass, I think it's a valid comment that the glass might make it look too front entry, like look like a front entry. So I can almost, I'm sympathetic to your comment there, but something about what's there it just isn't doing it for me, and I'll defer to some of the other architects for their comments. Thanks.
Commissioner Bond.
Yes, thank you. I just want to agree with the staff's recommendations about getting on-site samples and looking at that with a cleaned building. That's a critical step to take. I would recommend that you reduce the number of materials that you're proposing. There should be a single brick type, one metal panel type. Maybe the metal panel is applied at the space. I'm looking at something you're not, but where you have the gray brick vertical strip against the historic building, maybe that's the metal panel, one color. So just simplify your materials overall, because the historic building has a simple materials palette.
Okay.
Commissioner Prather.
Yes, this is Commissioner Prather, and I wanted to applaud you for advocating for people with disabilities. And I did take a look at the wood, and it does need some help. So I would encourage relooking at the shape. The more rectangular structure seems to be a better complement of the historic building. Thank you.
Commissioner Kaplan.
Howdy. If we could go to the proposed floor plans, please. So if those angles were to be straightened, would it be possible to bring them in to create a wider setback? Or would they have to be brought out? Because I see there's an angle, in one case there's the angle of the stairs, in the other case there's an elevator wall. So that's my,
Right.
I guess that's a
So,
question.
It's a good question. It's a maybe. It depends on the floor-to-floor height and how many risers I need to fit in that stair, and whether, we could work out the grades and all, where we're gonna be hitting, because we gotta hit lower level, first floor, and grade, and so all those gotta marry up. And so in a sense, that was the part of what unlocked this angle, to be absolutely honest. But it's not necessarily the only way to do it. So the recommendation to study it in a rectilinear fashion, we would do that, and maybe it proves to be possible, and at that point, maybe the reveal could get larger, or it could prove I don't get the risers I need, and I don't get the door clearances that are required, and at which point, at least we've demonstrated that.
Yeah, because if it's not possible to bring it in and it ends up coming out, it seems like that'd be kind of going in the wrong direction. I think I'm a lone voice, but I actually don't mind the angle. I think it serves to differentiate it from the rest of the building, and it's still symmetrical. And one thing I do agree with staff and others is that transition from the existing brick to what you're proposing. Maybe it's because of the colors, maybe it's because of the multiple materials, but it is a little jarring. It doesn't look like it really fits in. I don't know what the solution is. I'm not an architect, but that is, yeah, that's something that I noticed off the bat too. But like I said, I don't mind, I don't have any comments about anything else. I think it looks great, the scale, everything people have been saying, but I personally don't mind the angle, especially if straightening it means, lessening, making it more visible and, bring it out to the existing wall.
This is Commissioner Haynes, and I'll give you my thoughts and try and wrap it up for you. At first glance at the angular wall specifically, I do feel it from the street that angle helps hide the addition versus if it's squared off, you will likely capture the corner from the street, from the sidewalk. Looking back, there's kind of narrow vistas on the sides. If it's squared off, you're likely will see the corners. So I too share Commissioner Kaplan's thoughts and some of the others that I could be okay with the angled wall. It does help differentiate the proposed additions from the historic resource, and that's something that we tend to desire. If the setback could be larger, that would be better. I suppose I would trade off squaring it off if the setback were meaningfully deeper. You know, if you could get to 12, if you're only going to get 2 more inches, that's nothing. It has to be significant, and significant to me would be at least 12 to 14 inches offset to really make a difference. I agree with some of the comments of the materials. If we could go to the elevation. Thank you. I think simplifying is better. Specifically, the gray brick above the transom window, I don't think that adds architectural value to it, since it's such a relatively small facade. I think simplified, I do tend to favor the gray brick or a differentiating brick between the historic resource and the new addition. I could see that being a pre-finished aluminum panel as well, to make that differentiation. There was a comment by staff about trying to make the rhythm of the window or the bay spacing proportional in the addition, which I'm not precisely sure how to do that, other than perhaps the door and the masonry opening of the door and transom. Maybe it's wider, maybe it's a door with a side light to get a masonry opening proportion that's closer to the historic. You're not going to get the height because we don't have the height due to the floor level, the grade level. That's understood. And I don't think that's totally important here because this is an addition. It's hardly seen from the streetscape, so I don't think we need to be as rigorously symmetrical, or we want a complementary rhythm, but I don't think that has to be precise. I do think your base stone, that Arbon precast stone, at least from the photographs, feels potentially jarring against the limestone, and so I'd rather see you just match the limestone and then let the brick differentiate, brick color differentiate. That's really going to do the lines work of the differentiation. I personally wouldn't mind even a limestone cap on top of the wall, but I'd be fine with a metal clad cap as well. If we go back to the facades for a moment. Yep, that's fine, thank you. I wouldn't mind seeing, at least up high, a transom window on the ends of the additions. Maybe it's proportional to the transom of the side windows. Again, just to throw some natural light in there, just to give that facade some articulation. I agree that it's the back of the building and security is an issue, so we want people to feel safe, but I do think if it's high, then you get light in there, and it's not such a enclosed space from an interiors perspective. But I think otherwise, you're hearing general support for the project. We do appreciate that you're interested in preserving the property and doing the right things. I think with some refinement that we can support this. I believe that's a fair statement to say from the commissioners.
Are we allowed to respond?
You may.
Well, thank you. I appreciate all the comments. You know, I've been in construction and retail all my life, so I've built commercial properties, and I've had the experience with the counties of Maryland and Virginia, which are very different. But our initial proposal was to really closely match the brick and color of the existing structure so it would not stand out so much and it would appear to be part of that building, just like the back wall is all brick. Maybe if this were the coloring or slightly different color of the brick, it would blend in and be softer in appearance to anyone coming up to the structure. So color and the approach of style and some materials, you know, we gave this to you to look at and give us feedback so that we could then come back with some other colors that you might think is more appropriate, so that we at least advance. You know, I have to come up with a decision on doing this, and I'm just about there. This is important in my mind with the elevator and the ramping of the stairs for anticipated use of people parking in the public parking lot, walking diagonally and gaining access to the building, and have it as safe and approachable as possible. You know, I've just seen too much vandalism on structures that are glass, mostly glass, that puts people in danger. So, you know, this is part of it. So we're open for color and materials. I prefer the brick mostly, but combining it with other materials to make it blend more is fine. It's great.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
So
No,
I think,
and I agree, that seeing it with actual photos in situ makes all the difference, and whether we can get the limestone adequately clean to know what we're matching against, you know, or finding, you know, something that's been concealed from the elements to some extent and use that as our test. Yeah, we fully agree, bringing that to the HOP would be paramount.
but just to clarify, I think you are hearing support for brick.
Right.
We might tweak the colors. I don't mind the buff color. I think the contrast, again, helps identify the addition from the historic resources, and that contrast is typically desired. We are suggesting a hyphen with a different color brick between the historic resource and the addition. So again, these are all elements that we use to identify the new structure from the historic, and so that's, I feel, in alignment with our goals. But if you, the difficulty, if you try to match the brick and you don't match it, or you get something close, it oftentimes looks like you just didn't match the brick color, like you were trying, but you didn't get there. So I would support the buff color myself, because it is what it is, and we're not trying to match something that may not be able to be matched well. I don't think none of us comment, and I hate to open up the discussion, but the canopy over the entry door, I know staff wasn't fond of that, but it serves a purpose of at least providing some shelter getting in and out of the elevator core.
And in the back, just if I could respond, there's sort of a precedent for sort of a plain, extended plain loading dock roof. So.
And again, I think from the street, from the sidewalk, it would be hardly noticeable. So I certainly don't think it impacts the architectural integrity of the historic resource, given the distance from the sidewalk and the narrow vista, especially if we maintain the angled walls, that canopy will barely be seen. So I do think having some shelter there, I don't know if being it off-center from the door was intentional.
Right. It was, again, from an accessibility standpoint, you have the approach side, pull side, have a little bit more maneuverability, so.
Well, maybe if you do the suggestion of a side panel with the door, then
Right.
that gives you,
It would kind of marry up.
becomes symmetrical that way. The door is swinging towards the parking lot, though. Should it swing the other way? If the
Would you
people
move
are
to the
coming-
plans? I apologize. Well, it was also potentially for people accessing from the sidewalk too, but the door swing could go either way, absolutely.
I'll leave that to you. Well, very good. So there's our comments. Staff has a record of all of this. They can provide you notes on our comments, and we'll work with you to come back. The question to the commission, do we think they should come back with a HOP or with another preliminary? Dead silence, crickets, everybody's tired.
This is Commissioner Prather. I propose that they move forward with the HOP.
So come back, yes.
I didn't hear.
Commissioner Prather is proposing you come back for a HOP submission.
Okay.
And I will support that as well. So come back with a HOP submission with more detail, architectural plans, elevations, material specs, all that fun stuff. All right?
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay. We're going to move on to item 3, the update to the HPC Executive Regulations, Section 1.6D7.
All right, this is Laura with the staff. Today, we are pleased to hold a work session on the proposal to expand the staff level approval authority within the HPC's Executive Regulations, Section 1.6D. This is the second public hearing on the proposed amendments. The goals of this project were laid out in the first hearing on April 8th, 2026, and are intended to further increase the efficiency of the HOP review process for applicants, members of the HPC, and staff, as well as increase staff availability for compliance and enforcement cases, and reduce county costs associated with legal advertisements and public notifications. Brief background that you have seen before: the Master Plan for Historic Preservation and Chapter 24A of the Montgomery County Code were adopted by County Council in 1979, enabling the HPC to review and approve any exterior, visual, or material changes to properties or their surrounding environmental settings within the Master Plan, historic districts, and historic sites in Montgomery County. In 1997, County Council amended Chapter 24A to allow the HPC to delegate approval authority to a county employee qualified in historic preservation and assigned to staff the commission to review and approve an application for work that commonly has no more than an insignificant effect on a historic resource. And although that provision enabled staff level approvals, the HPC did not pursue the necessary amendment to the executive regulations to formally establish such a process at that time, and as a result, all HOPs continued to require review and approval of the HPC until the adoption of Executive Regulation 1120, authorizing staff level approvals for certain HOP applications in January 2021. Over the course of the last 5 years, staff has been pleased with the success of the staff level process, but has found that many HOP applications with only an insignificant effect on a historic resource still require review by the HPC because they don't fit precisely within the existing staff level approval categories. Most of these applications are placed on the HPC's consent agenda and approved without individual discussion or public testimony. So on April 8th, 2026, the Historic Preservation Division staff presented a proposal to expand the staff level approval authority within the Historic Preservation Commission Rules, Regulations, and Procedures, Regulation 2797, as amended in part by Regulation 1120, Executive Regulations, Section 1.6D. At that hearing, you all offered initial feedback on the proposed amendment language and directed staff to conduct outreach to local advisory panels, local governments, and other frequent users of the HOP process to solicit input and build support for these amendments. At that hearing, the primary draft language change requested by members of the HPC was to replace the term inconspicuous with limited visibility, and staff amended this language prior to issuing a request for comment to stakeholders. So staff distributed the text of the proposed amendments to representatives of local LAPs, including Brookville, Capitol View Park, Chevy Chase Village, Clarksburg, Boyd's, Hyattstown, Garrett Park, Greenwich Forest, Kensington, National Park Seminary, Potomac Overlook, Somerset, and Tacoma Park, Montgomery County Parks Cultural Resources Stewardship Section, Montgomery County Department of Government Services, municipal government representatives for Brookville, Chevy Chase Village, Garrett Park, Kensington, Tacoma Park, and the town of Somerset. We emailed the amendments to those entities on April 21st, 2026, requesting comments by June 1st, 2026. As of June 1st, 2026, we had received comments from two organizations, the Garrett Park Historic Preservation Committee and the Montgomery Parks Cultural Resources Stewardship, that's very hard to say, Stewardship Section. James Fleming, chair of the Garrett Park Historic Preservation Committee, wrote that his committee met to discuss the proposed amendments on May 6th, 2026, and unanimously supported the changes. Montgomery County Parks Cultural Resources section responded with suggestions for clarification and additional expansion of the staff level approval authority categories. Parks requested, included the following issues. They requested clarification as to whether the installation of new or replacement of existing interpretive signage would be included under subsection or category R. They made suggestions that lighting, the installation of technology and security, such as security cameras, Wi-Fi, et cetera, and routine park maintenance activities such as replacing park furniture, benches, playground equipment, or amenities could be included as new or expanded categories. So staff has tried to incorporate some of these suggestions into the draft language, which we will address shortly. So today's hearing is the next step in this amendment process, which will be followed by transmission of the proposed amendment with any additional changes to the county executive and then on to county council for review and adoption. So during this hearing, the HPC should identify any changes to the draft language and recommend that the planning director or designee transmit the proposed regulations to the county executive for adoption under a Method 2 regulation amendment. The amendment would then be reviewed and hopefully adopted by county council this fall. Getting into the amendment language, underlined text is proposed text, bracketed text is to be removed, and text that is underlined in red shows changes since the April 21st request for comment. In these categories, no changes other than replacing inconspicuous with limited visibility have been made since April 8th. For these, no changes. On this slide, we've replaced inconspicuous with will have limited visibility. Here we have added under subsection K to address one of Parks's comments. We've added permanently anchored site furnishings such as park benches. Here was just a word that was missing previously, an L. No changes other than we've got 3 limited visibilities. We've added security cameras to Q, although I will note that this is not a non-exhaustive list, so additional work could be included under this, provided it doesn't have a significant impact on the resource. And we created a new category for replacement of playground equipment within an existing playground area. Our staff felt that the installation of a fully new playground would still need to require HPC review, but that replacement of playground equipment is within an existing playground could be approved by staff. A few other tweaks to section 1.6D that relate to the categories in 1.67, including requiring authorization from the municipality or other regulatory authority for new fences, as well as car charging stations in the right-of-way. So to summarize, staff recommends the HPC deliberate on the proposed amendment language, offer any changes to be incorporated, and then direct staff to transmit the proposed amendments to County Council to amend the Historic Preservation Commission executive regulations under Method 2 authority as permitted under 24A7G2A to delegate approval authority to a county employee qualified in historic preservation and assign to staff the commission to review and approve an application for work that commonly has no more than an insignificant effect on a historic resource. Following this recommendation by the HPC, the planning director or designee will then transmit the regulations to the county executive for an open review period prior to action by the county council. And
Commissioners have any? Commissioner Prather.
So I did read this, and thank you for the thoroughness, especially underlining the changes. One thing I couldn't find, I'm sure it's in here, are solar panels. I saw the electric vehicles and all of that, but,
Sure.
oh, there it is, P.
They're here under P. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Galway.
As Commissioner Galway, on 1.6, I guess what page is this? Actually, line item 15 on attachment A.
And of course, I
At the
did
top-
not put
toward the top,
the line items in this. which
A
would have
page,
been
looks
helpful.
like page 4, maybe.
Do you have the subsection letter, the category letter? Sorry.
Supporting documents, and then attachment A and attachment B. I don't know, subsection, section 24A-4, regulations, 24A01, historic area work permits, decisions, 1.6, decisions, bless you.
Give us just a second, we'll pull this up.
I don't know where to. It's right at the beginning of the first attachment. Oops, I just closed my file. Maybe I can ask the question, and where you, in this one particular 7B, you've removed reference to the installation of vents and pipes in locations not visible, and then it's been completely replaced with reference to windows and doors and existing openings.
Yes.
Yeah, there we go. Is the reference to vents and venting piping elsewhere in the document that I missed, or?
It is. We incorporated it along with, we sort of combined it with other work under, apologize, under J. Yeah, here, so.
I got it, okay. All right, that was really the only question I had. You did the same thing with the gutters and downspouts, and I saw that where you had taken it out at one spot, 7.C,
Yeah,
but
so
you put it
here's-
back in.
We kind of expanded category Q here to have electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and sort of combine all of those items into one. So we've got vents and vet piping.
We also, sorry. We also expanded, can you go to Y really quickly? So those are all for existing, and then under Y, we also included the addition of vents and pipes as a post-approval item that could be staff approved as well.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Any other questions? Or did we address minivans and RV? Oh, sorry, that's if there are no more questions or comments for this, then I presume we need to make a motion to transmit this document. And I'll be happy to make that motion. I move that the HPC transmit to the county council the draft language for the proposed regulations to the county executive for adoption under Method 2 Regulation Amendment. Do I have a second?
Commissioner Galway, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 The ayes have it, and that motion is passed, and we can transmit this to the county council.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yay, thank you, nice job. All right, we'll go to the tax credit groups 4.
All right, so for this group, Group 4 of the Historic Preservation Tax Credit applications for calendar year 2025, staff has determined that there are 35 applications in Group 4 consisting of $1,263,235.37 in eligible expenditures for owners of properties designated on the master plan for historic preservation. Summary sheets were included for your review for each of those applications. And we would request that you approve these applications, or if you have any amendments, and then direct staff to transmit those to the Department of Finance, those recommendations.
Do any of the commissioners have questions regarding these tax credits? If not, do I have a recommendation? Commissioner Galway.
This is Commissioner Galway. I move that we approve the application for the tax credits for Tax Credit Group 4, calendar year 2025, and transmit these to the Department of Finance for payment.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
It's Commissioner Prather. I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, and that is approved. Moving forward to item 5, minutes. Minutes of May 27, 2026. Has anybody read the minutes? Would anybody care to vouch for those minutes?
Mr. Chair, I read the minutes, and I was present at that meeting, and they look correct to me.
So we are moving that we are approving the minutes of May 27, 2026. Do I have a second?
Commissioner Kaplan, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
We have 4 ayes and 1 abstention, and so those minutes are approved. We have commission items, and the discussion we had earlier was for the August 19th, 2026 meeting. Do we have the option to do it virtual or in person? And any thoughts by the commissioners on their preference?
I'm leaning virtual just by way of not knowing what my August plans might be, and that would be best, perhaps.
I too believe I will be out of town on that date and would have to attend virtually myself. So we have two in support of virtual. And unless I hear from other commissioners in the next 30 seconds.
This Commissioner Galway, either way works.
Commissioner Prather, either way works.
Commissioner Kaplan.
I'm fine with anything.
Then I'm going to recommend we do the August 19th meeting virtually.
Could we get a motion for that?
Yes.
Thank you.
I move that the HPC move their August 19th, 2026 meeting to a virtual session versus a typical in-person. Do I have a second on that motion?
This is Commissioner Bond, I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. The ayes have it, and that motion is passed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Staff items.
The only staff item, just reiterating what I had said in the work session, we're running down to the end of the fiscal year, so please fill out your reimbursement forms tonight, especially if you think you might not be here at our next meeting, and then staff will collect them and get you all reimbursed appropriately.
Thank you for that warning. And if there are no more items, then this meeting is adjourned.